talk about the Labor Party and the carbon tax. There's a lot of talk about the Labor Party at the moment. You'd think they were still in government, I know, but we need to focus on a couple of issues, and one of them in particular is the carbon tax, whether or not they'll allow the Abbott government, the new Abbott government, to repeal the carbon tax. A lot of messaging coming from the Labor Party, especially the leadership at the moment, saying that they won't. They'll effectively use their numbers in the Senate with the Greens to block Tony Abbott's efforts to repeal the carbon tax. I don't think this is what's going to happen. Let me explain why. Firstly, you've got to think about 2007 and what the Labor Party promised then. They promised an ETS. They tried to bring it in. They had that blocked. They could have taken it. Kevin Rudd could have taken it to a double dissolution, but instead, no, he dropped it. So they promised an ETS but dropped it. In 2010, they promised not to have a carbon tax. Julia Gillard famously said there would be no carbon tax under a government she lead, yet she brought in a carbon tax. So again, they've done exactly the opposite to what they did. This election, 2013, here's what Kevin Rudd promised.
Government has decided to terminate the carbon tax. This will mean average families $380 a year better off.
There you go. Now, we know, of course, Kevin Rudd was talking about switching to a floating price next year and still having a carbon price, but there was no mistaking the rhetoric there, was there? He was terminating the tax. His climate change minister said they were repealing the tax, and they were doing it because of cost of living pressures. Very difficult for Labor then, in opposition, to go against repealing the tax. They would be doing the precise opposite from what they promised 3 elections in a row on the same issue of climate change. Extremely difficult politics, and I just think common sense will see through in the end for them. But here's what the interim Labor Party leader Chris Bowen had to say on this today.
I believe in carbon pricing. I believe that climate change is real, and I believe we should do something about it. I believe the Labor Party should continue to put that point of view.
And of course, apart from having the acting Prime Minister at the moment, not the acting Prime Minister, the caretaker Prime Minister at the moment is Kevin Rudd. You've just seen Chris Bowen, who's the interim leader of the Labor Party. There are, of course, the other 2 people who are competing to be the Labor leader. That is Anthony Albanese and, of course, Bill Shorten. So there's leaders aplenty at the moment, but no one really running the country until we get Tony Abbott sworn in. But Anthony Albanese was out spruiking his leadership credentials today, and he had a bit to say on the carbon tax as well, harking back to the sorts of rhetoric we've heard from the Labor Party back when Kevin Rudd was leading it in 2007.
If Tony Abbott goes to a G20 meeting or a UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, or any of the world's forums and sits around with David Cameron, Barack Obama, Angela Merkel and says, I think climate change is crap, we will be a laughingstock as a nation.
So there you go. That's what you're hearing at the moment from the Labor Party leadership. They're going to hold the line on the carbon tax and climate change. I think they'll have to roll over. And one of the reasons we're still hearing it now is because of this experiment, this new experiment with the Labor leadership. Anthony Albanese and Bill Shorten have to pitch for votes from the 30 to 40,000 Labor Party members in this country. If they give them the idea they're going to roll over on the carbon tax, it'll probably cost them leadership votes. I think the people in this country who are most keen to keep a price on carbon would be members of the Labor Party and members of the Greens. So they're going to have to pitch their message that's still very strongly anti-carbon tax, pro-carbon tax, sorry, in order to get the leadership. And that's why you're going to see this rhetoric maintained, I think, for a few weeks. But once they settle that leadership issue and the reality of facing the Abbott government, its mandate, and the reality of opposition and perhaps wanting to get on the right side of this issue finally, I think they're going to have to roll over. It just seems irresistible.